Hello everybody and welcome back to Formula 1 2018. We're going to go on to practice sessions at Bahrain, starting with obviously practice 1. Hopefully I don't crash out as much here. I feel like I'm better at this track, but I'm sure this is going to completely prove me wrong.
Welcome to the deserts of Bahrain, where the Formula 1 circus has rolled into town.
Hopefully this sand doesn't affect me too much.
Today's practice session. Welcome then to all our viewers, and of course to Anthony Davidson as well. Now, Ant, I wanted to ask you, obviously there's a lot of hard work involved in these sessions.
Hey, look, it's me.
Simulations as well. Is this something the drivers enjoy, or is
How
it
about
just
that?
a routine that becomes a chore?
There's nothing routine.
And I'm messing with the,
car, I can tell you that.
sorry about talking over them, but I'm messing with the microphone levels.
4G through the corners. It's hard
So you might not hear me as much.
Acting on your body. It's lap after lap of hard, exhausting work. You always enjoy driving these cars. It's a real privilege. Although I must say, if you're having a day where you can't get the car to do what you want,
I'm practicing audio setup during practice.
then it's a lot harder to stay motivated. But never a chore, no. Even if you're having a tough start to the weekend, at this point you know that if you work hard at it, there's still an opportunity to turn things around.
Yeah, what he said. I'm going to start with track acclimatization, as always. Oh, we get to run medium compound this weekend.
A bit like a rubber out on track. Try to take it easy for a couple of laps.
I'm just going to jump right out to it. And I'm going to try to stay with this camera angle. I had at least one person say they preferred it. Yeah, not only am I, pretty good at this track, in my own mind, it's one of my favorites. Especially because it's a night race and I like that. As far as where I have trouble at, I have trouble, obviously, through the S's. But there's so much paved runoff area here, I would doubt I would crash into the wall bad enough to have to retire there. These corners right here is where I always miss apexes. Like, if I ever hit that apex at all, it'll be a miracle. And then this section coming up here, the uphill. This right-hander always catches me out. If I've crashed out here, it's been because of that right-hander. I think I've crashed out of this race twice because of that right-hander. I just get on the curb, it spins me out, and I hit the inside wall because it's very close to the track right there. But like I said, most of this track has some nice lengthy paved runoff areas, unlike Australia where it's very tight. Albert Park's a very tight circuit. Alright, last car I ran here was an 08 McLaren, so I might have to relearn braking zones and such. And how to lay down the throttle, holy cow. I was all over the place coming through turn 2 there. Here's where I'm going to miss all the apexes. Hear me modulating the throttle there probably. I bet I got a red on that one because of the speed I had through it. Same thing with those greens instead of purples is probably the runoff speed. The just speed and maybe a little bit of positioning issues. So as you can see, there's some better than I did on my first lap at Albert Park, but there's definitely some room for improvement over these practice sessions.
That's looking good. Now let's try for purple. You'll get a bonus for consistency if you can chain good corners together.
But less of a risk of me crashing in spectacular fashion. Okay, so turn 2 in this McLaren is a lot harder than turn 2 in that 08 McLaren. Ah! I tried to get a little bit more speed into the corner and I got too much. Oh, about missed that one. Come on, good exit. Excellent on the DRS. Looking for a 445. I got a 255 right now. Had one red last lap. Got one red so far this lap. Make that 2. That one's green last lap. It's purple this lap. I'll take it. Now let's try to get a bit more speed through these last two, 14 and 15. So didn't get the 445, but another 395. Hopefully we can cut out those reds and dang it. Tried to gradually feed it in and it didn't work for me. About the 100-meter board. That's the thing about Bahrain is I feel like the braking zones are a bit more of a free-for-all from driver to driver. Kind of straighten that corner out. That's going to change my speed going into this one. I like that section of the track, that 9-10 area. Gets the blood pumping every lap. I haven't even been looking at what my lap times are. And that's another thing, is the last course I ran at Bahrain was the short course, so I might be getting used to that. So only one red that lap, and it was one that hadn't been red before. Oh, I almost missed that DRS zone. 420 out of 495. But 135, 352. That's a fairly decent time. But no, I was running the short course, which ducks off right here and just jumps onto that back straightaway. Box this lap.
Right, come in at the end of this lap.
Yeah, especially through this section, the braking zones seem to be more of a by-lap basis, not a set mark for each lap, because one turn affects the other so much. 134, 619, so he's about, well, what is that, a full second? 130. Yeah, second, no, less than a second. 6/10. So just over half a second faster, I think. Doing quick math in my head while focusing on driving, so could be wrong. So, not too far off the pace of a Ferrari on their first flying lap. I'll take it. I try to run practice 1 and 2, which are both an hour and a half in race trim, and then do practice 3, the happy hour in qualifying trim, since it's right before qualifying. Another thing is I'm going to practice entering the pits and trying to get down to pit speed right before the line, which is what you want to do, but I haven't quite fine-tuned it for this track. I got better marks at other tracks. Alright, so since we're sticking with race trim, I think what we'll do next is we'll either work from left to right or we'll do the race strategy program next, because I like to get that one done. The track acclimatization, race strategy, and qualifying pace are the 3 most important in my eyes. But, I mean, tire management and fuel management,
So far, our fastest lap is a 1:35.3.
I know that I can read. But anyways, the 3 managements, the tire management and fuel management and ERS management, are the least important in my eyes, but team thinks otherwise. What do they want us to do? Setting optimals? Okay, so those 2 are qualifying pace, and then beat the average speed trap speed. So they want me to be faster than the average through the speed trap. McLaren all about speed? No, never. See what kind of tires we got for this session. So these 2 get returned at the end of the session. Already put some laps on that. We'll run the softs for race strategy. We'll run these 3 on the softs, and then we'll leave qualifying pace for a session that has super softs, so either 2 or 3. And we can go back and rerun the programs. You can't just, it's not a one and done. We can rerun them, or we can just set some laps by ourselves, and I'm not too worried about crashing out early in this track. We already made it past the 10-minute mark, so we got a stream. Look at the timing table so far. Second fastest out of the 3 that have run. Not fastest in any
I know
sectors.
it's tempting to focus entirely on the race, but we should put a bit of time aside to run the qualifying sim program. Try to run it before the end of FP3 if you can.
Oh, we are completely within a second everywhere on Kimi Räikkönen, which is nice. Alright, let's run race strategy.
Standing by.
I swear there used to be a 10-lap practice program. So I remember dreading that one. It might have been in 2016, though. I also played that game a lot. That might be what I'm thinking. I think race strategy was 10 laps in 2016, or they changed it in an update and I never noticed on this game. I always dreaded doing that 10-lap one. Alright. Might want that open to make some adjustments. And I've been watching some chain bear videos here lately. Getting some good qualifying strategies for how many flying laps to link together, what ERS setting and stuff. And if you are curious about Formula One and don't know much about it, I would recommend Chain Bear F1. The word chain, the word bear, and then the letters F, and then the number 1. Good YouTube channel that explains the in-depth strategies and such of Formula One and the new technical advances and such. So yes, that is advertising for another channel, and I wish he sponsored me, because that is a great channel. I wish he'd do some NASCAR stuff, explain some of that. Explain the reasoning behind why NASCAR does what it does, because I don't think NASCAR even understands why they do what they do. See, that's the thing, is different times of day change my marks here at Bahrain, because where that Rolex gantry is above for the braking zone for 14 and 15, I always use the shadow of it, but as time progresses the shadow moves. And I'm not sure what time of day is when it is my mark or not. So then I kind of have to gauge where 75 meters is, or about 80 meters from the turn, whereas that one's about 110 meters from the turn I want to get on the brakes. And I suppose the nice thing about this camera view is down in the bottom corner it shows my throttle and brake trace. Back end got a bit light there. You can see the race pace time. And if I remember right, they don't want you going too much faster than race pace prediction. But here I am almost making up a whole second on it. I came off the gas completely through there. Oh, I just realized Raikkonen set that lap, or at least now he's on the mediums. So maybe that lap is not attainable by us. Well, that lap is, but his speed is probably not matched by us.
Okay, super job so far. We're getting great data. Stay focused.
About 125 meters out on that corner, I want to hit the brakes, and I overshot at that lap. I went more towards 110. And that's how much just a little bit of braking zone change screws up your whole corner set in Formula One. I mean, NASCAR, the braking zones are more pliable, I'd say. Like, if you brake late, is not as big of a deal because you can just throw the car sideways and make it through the corner. And a lot of, like, touring car series are the same way, but F1, not so much. And if you're new to F1, or just have never seen a track road course before, this is a newer road course. You can tell by the big paved runoff areas, whereas Melbourne Albert Park yesterday, I'm going to refer to it as last weekend even though it was yesterday, was an older course that has the grass runoff areas and the closer walls. And really, Circuit Paul Ricard is the newest on the championship, I think, or at least the most recently rebuilt, and it has massive paved runoff areas. It's almost impossible, although I'm sure I'll find a way to do it, to crash out of a race there. So there's just acres upon acres of runoff area. And you can see we're beating it by about a second and 2/10. About a second and 2/10 faster than what they paced us at. So maybe, just maybe, they lowered their expectations from last week and I'll be able to exceed them this week. And now I'm gauging these braking zones based on these tires. The braking zones might shorten up a little bit on the super soft tires. As of course the super soft are the softest compound available this weekend. These are the middle, the softs with the yellow sidewalls, and then the white sidewalls are the hards, or the hardest, but the medium compound from Pirelli. And you can't actually buy colored sidewall tires from Pirelli. I don't think they correspond to the compounds that they share the colors with in F1, but they might. But I think you can buy yellow, white, or red. Now I've actually thought about painting mine, since these are slicks, but the wet tires are green for intermediates and blue for full wets. I've been thinking about, since full wets look like regular road tires, I've been thinking about painting blue sidewalls on mine. You know, I could bump up my lap times by bumping up the ERS to medium. I like to keep the ERS during race laps set to a spot where it will... Now these are just normal setting laps, not passing people or holding people off. I like to keep it set to a spot where the amount harvested and the amount used each lap pretty well neutrals itself out. And you can see when I was leaving it set at mode 2, it was kind of hovering around 80%. Now that I bumped it up to 3, which is supposedly high. Sorry that voice crack. It'll bump my lap times up a bit. And it might not completely deplete down to 0, but if I lose track of it, it might run all the way down to 0 before I catch it. And yeah, you can see we're already a second and 2/10 faster than the pace time. One of the things you got to worry about in Bahrain, and I can't tell really if they've added it into this game, is there's sand all over the place, because obviously it's in the middle of the desert. So if you run off the racing line, or especially onto the runoff areas, your tires get covered in sand. And it's like when you get into the marbles at Martinsville. It's just impossible to make the next corner you go to before you scrub the sand off. I just realized I went up to highest. So yeah, these consistent laps are just more proof as to why. Yeah, you can see I ran it up to mode 3 and we're down to 50% already, so mode 2 is definitely the one. I'll have enough to make it through this lap if I didn't overshoot that braking zone because I was looking down at my gauges. But we survived. That's what I like about this track, is you have room for error and not completely wreck. But I also like the ones that... This one doesn't necessarily reward errors, but it's not as strict on punishment as a lot of tracks are. Monaco being the absolute worst. Monaco is the longest race on the circuit time-wise, even though it's the shortest lengthwise, and it just takes full concentration every second of every lap, and if you slip up even once, you're in the Armco and you're out of the race. Because Monaco's just such tight quarters, and Baku's a little bit better, but not like third sector at Baku, the European Grand Prix, which is held in Asia, oddly enough, has runoff areas in the third sector a little bit. Most of that track is the wall is at the edge, and it's even got the tightest point in F1 on any circuit. Box this lap.
Okay, we can take you this lap.
And you can see I turned down to mode 2 there and overshot my normal braking zone, and already my delta's gone down to positive. Not positive by much, but it is positive. Now, I've still got the difficulty set to 75, and as far as assists that I have, and these are pliable, I might take them off by the end of the season once I get more comfortable and into it, is I have traction control on to medium, not full. I will admit that.
There's only 1 lap of fuel remaining.
And I do have analog brakes on, but the way I've been gauging my brakes these past couple weekends, well, last weekend and this weekend in the career mode, I'll probably turn off ABS by... I'll say I'll run through Monaco with ABS, and then I'll turn on ABS, or turn off ABS for Canada, is my plan right now. And as far as traction control, I might turn it off at the same time. Or that might be too much at once, so I might turn off ABS, and if that works out, I'll turn off traction control for the next race. Or I might even, turn off ABS for practice 1 and then turn off traction control for practice 2 if ABS works out right now. Let's test out this braking zone. Oh, way too early. Way too early to be efficient coming into the pits. Alright, so we got track acclimatization, if that's pronounced right, which probably isn't. And we have... what was the other one? Race strategy done. So now... excuse me. So now, we'll probably do the 3 managements, so then I have the rest of this session, and the rest of... and then I'll run qualifying and practice 2. And then the rest of that session, I'll have to just run laps And I might even run through and do race strategy at different compounds in practice 2 and practice 3, and then I can redo qualifying pace in practice 3 once I dial in like downforce and stuff, because I'm just still set at neutral on the car setup. What's our power unit wear at? 7% on the ICE, or no, overall wear at 7%.
So far, our fastest lap is a 1:33.7.
10%, 5%, 7%, 6%, 8%, 5%. So yeah, basically you have 3 internal combustion engines. You have 2 MGU-Ks, motor generator unit kinetic, and 3 MGU-Hs, which I'll explain what each of these are, and then 2 energy stores, 3 turbocharger setups, and 2 ECUs to run the whole season. You can run more, which is why there's the little plus sign, but you get a grid penalty for running more. And basically the internal combustion engine is the 1.6 liter V6 that is the base in the powerhouse of the engine. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. The MGU-K harvests energy from the wheels. I got time to explain this stuff because we got plenty of practice time, so I got over an hour. MGU-K pulls the kinetic energy from the wheels, both under braking and under normal driving conditions, and puts it into the energy store like a giant battery. The MGU-H pulls the heat off the exhaust manifold and uses that heat to produce energy that's also put into the energy store. The energy store stores the energy.
The speed trap, 190.7 miles per hour.
The energy store is the battery that stores it and then runs it through the electric motor to also... So basically, these are turbo hybrid Formula 1 cars, and that electric motor works in conjunction, in tandem, if you will, with the internal combustion engine and run together. And that's what the ERS is. It's how much energy is pulled out of that energy store into the electric motor. And I do believe there's a limited amount as what you can use per lap. I might be wrong on that. It might just be a glitch I have on here, or I'm just running out of power from the energy store. But then again, that percentage bar is the energy store. So it might be there's a limited amount that can come out, or it's just the teams that I've worked for having a limited amount that can come out. And then, of course, the control electronics, the ECU, is basically the computer that runs the fuel injectors, the timing curve, the camshaft phasers, which I'm sure a Formula 1 car has. I haven't seen a Formula 1 engine in person. I haven't even seen a computer breakdown, but I'm in the field, so I can make an assumption as to what it is. And an ECU on your car basically runs...
Quick note about tyres. Just bear in mind we have to return the 2 most worn sets at the end of this session. They're gone forever at that point, so be careful how and when you use them, and don't waste any sets that you might need later on.
So they don't... It monitors all the sensors on the engine and then adjusts timing and fuel spray to... and sometimes valve and cam phasers to get the most out of the engine. And I'm sure that's what control electronics are on here. The ECU, engine control unit, or ECM, engine control module. Then gearbox, known in America as transmission, you get 1 practice gearbox, you get 1 event gearbox for the whole season, which is 21 races. Practice gearbox, used for P1 and P2. Event gearbox is used for P3, which is qualifying trim and qualifying and race sessions. Yeah, you can see, as per Article 23.5 of the sporting regulations, an event gearbox must be used in these sessions for 6 consecutive race weekends before being replaced. Fitting an additional event gearbox prior to fulfilling this requirement will result in a grid drop penalty. Basically the same thing with the power unit. Is you can change any of these, but you'll get a grid penalty. I think you can go to the second one In fact, we'll try it. There's no penalty for fitting an already allotted component on this page, the power unit. But if you make a new one, order a new one from the factory, or one that's not allotted, the 3-2-3-2-3-2, if it's not allotted for the season, you get a grid drop penalty for using it. Now, I'll try to explain tires, and you might have heard the engineer explain it, that at the end of practice 1, your 2 most worn sets get returned to Pirelli so they can look at them. At the end of practice 2, your 2 most worn sets get sent back. So basically these 6 tires are your practice tires.
Our best lap so far is a 1 minute 33.7.
And as you can see, they even have it recommended for P1, P1, P2, P2, P3, P3. And then these 2 are reserved for qualifying 1. This one's reserved for qualifying. These 2 are reserved for qualifying 2. This one's reserved for qualifying 3. And these 2 are reserved for the race. You have to use 2 different compounds in the race. The fastest 10 qualifiers have to start the race on the tires they ran that they set their fastest time in qualifying 2 on. Strategy gets crazy around this. They might, run an odd tire if they know they can make it in. Like they'll run the soft so they can start on a harder compound, but you really want to start the race on your softest compound. That being said, there's a strategy that pulls out in the midfield of we're not going to make it to the fast 10, so it doesn't really matter. We can run whatever in Q2. This changes when there's wet conditions either in qualifying 2 or for the start of the race. If the race starts in declared wet track conditions, that doesn't mean rain's on the way. If it is declared wet by the FIA for the start or during qualifying 2, the top 10 do not have to use their Q2 tires. They can start the race on full wets if they need it, or intermediates. Or if they ran intermediates or full wets in Q2, they can start on any dry compound they want, as long as you use 2 different compounds during the race, which forces 1 pit stop, unless they can throw the tires over the pit wall and make it to you somehow. As you can see, different compounds mean different lap times because they're softer and harder. Softer compound gives you better grip, doesn't last as long. Harder compound, less grip, lasts longer and has less fall off. Tires do not keep their full grip until they blow. They slowly deteriorate, which is why you can see here, this is what I set my fastest lap on. This would be a slower tire because it's a harder compound by 0.249 seconds. This would be over a second faster because it's a softer compound, and this is a worn soft versus a brand new super soft. This is a worn soft over on the far left compared to this brand new soft, which is almost a half a second faster, which shows you how much it's fallen off in the 6 laps I've put on it. So that's astronomical difference. Then you're allotted these for practice and qualifying, 3 inners, 2 full wets, and then an inner and a wet reserved for the race. Now, as far as what tires from qualifying are still available during the race, if you need extra sets, I'm not 100% sure. All I know is you have at least 3 tires set for the race. The ones if you didn't make qualifying 3, you get this set just available for the race, and then these 2 that are reserved for the race. If you made it to qualifying 3, which is the top 10, you use one of these 2.
Start to suffer from oversteer, come in and let us have a look at the setup. You will get oversteer if the rear tyres lose grip before the front. Usually this will be coming from a lack of rear downforce or an overly stiff rear suspension, but a little tweak with negative camber or toe-in can also help with this.
You'll start the race on one of these 2 sets, and then you'll have these 2. If you wind up making a 4th, or I guess a 3rd pit stop, I'm not sure which tires you're allowed, because I mean, these 6 have already been returned, and I do believe these 2 get returned, so I guess you'd still have whatever Q2 and Q3 tires left over, but I'm not 100% certain. So, that's enough strategy and background talk for now. Let's run a... let's run tire management, why not? And I'm going to use the same set of softs that we started out on, that we did 5 laps on already. So hopefully they take into account that they're not brand new. If they don't, we get to rerun this 3-lap segment. All right. We're now 4th fastest. We're probably the fastest on softs, though, which I love. And that wasn't even in party mode. That was just mode 3, mix 2. Not mix 4, mode 5. Get some heat into these babies before we start pushing. Even though they are what's called scrub tires. Scrub tires are tires that have already been used on track. Sticker tires are brand new. Still have the stickers on them. And if you are wondering what those pads are that are around the tires while the car's up on jacks in the garage, those are what's called tire warming blankets. They keep the tires up to temperature. Because if you look when I pull out of the pits, unlike series that don't allow tire blankets, they're not completely stone cold. They are, in fact, warm, but they're not completely up to warm operating temperature, so they do have to do the little swerving about on the formation lap and whatnot, and an out lap to get the tires up to snuff. Now, let's see, which Ferrari is pulling up behind me? If I had to guess, I'd say Raikkonen, but I'm not 100% certain. Let's go! Tire wearing. Alright, so we're already faster than the time we need. So I'm going to just gently roll into the brakes on these corners. In the hopes of, you know, not completely cooking the tires beyond what they want me to. Gently roll onto the brakes, gently input steering. Took the karting line, which means avoiding the apex. Through there, oh, I saw a little flash of red up at the top of the screen. That means we were either cooking the tires too much. But the karting line is away from the apex, but still touching the edges. And I didn't do it on purpose, I just overshot the corner. Trying to go gentle on the brakes. That corner, as you can tell by the gauge at the top, killed the tires, but I got it all back right there. Because I ran that corner gently because I have the spare time. Because you can see I'm 6/10 ahead. Trying to get it up in the purple, because if I do one lap in the purple, I don't have to do any more laps.
We managed the pace well that lap, and tyre wear is more or less as expected.
And hitting the rumble strips and obviously breaking the back tires loose will increase tire wear, and going full lock under full throttle and stuff like that, and especially locking them up into corners. Leaning on them through the S's will kill them. But you got to lean on them a little bit to keep that lap time good. And as you can see there, I wasn't even hardly putting in any steering input, but just the rumble strips ate the tires up because I was getting on the throttle while on the rumble strip, which is a bit like hitting the gas on a cheese grater. So the rumble strips are not smooth, and when I'm going by that fast, they look kind of short, and they just look like painted lines on the edge of the track. And some of them are usually towards the end of the rumble strips or the less common spots that are coming into contact with the wheels, like the places where people come off the track a bit less. But most of the time it's like a rumble strip on the side of the road, even a little bit more harsh. So it's not a recessed groove. It is in fact a bump.
This is the last lap of the program, final lap of the program.
As you can tell, I'm pushing about as hard as I was at Albert Park on these tires, and they're not wearing near as much, which is, as you may or may not have heard in the pre-race spiel. From there, I was all over the place there. That Albert Park is really rough on tires. Rolled that apex, beautiful speed through there. I almost wish I was pushing it on a flying lap there. Trying to get a purple lap. I got 2 green laps, which is good. I just don't want a red lap, but I'm trying to squeeze a purple lap out. And what's really going to make the difference is this uphill corner right here. A little bit of wear through there, but not as bad as it could have been. Clawing it back there. I got about a second, so I'm just going to take a long braking zone for this corner. Take it nice and slow, take a karting line. And get a lap in the purple. A lap in the purple and faster than pace. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, test complete, and that was a very
Almost
good
a
job indeed.
second.
We got a lot of valuable information out of that.
Almost a second faster than the pace lap. So these tires now have 8 racing laps on them. 2 out laps, an in lap, and this is another in lap. Box this lap.
Understood, stopping this lap.
God, I love that feature. So we're no longer the fastest of the softs. Well, then again, I don't know if that's Bottas set that lap on a soft, or if he's just on softs now. He probably set it on a super soft, and now he's on softs. It's kind of confusing. Lewis Hamilton just ran a 132.898, and I ran a 133.768. So he's almost a second faster, but I'm almost absolutely certain he's on super soft, and I have yet to put even any lap in on super soft. So I'm pretty happy about where I am in the standings right now, and I'm not supposed to be this high up. McLaren's like, of the 10 teams, McLaren's like 7th or 8th in ranking. So the fact that I'm up here spoiling the party in the top 6 is amazing. I'm really happy about that. And I haven't crashed out yet. See if I can't get a good run into the pits. That was almost beautiful. It was almost perfect. I was down to 40 mile an hour. So just a car length further and we'll be perfect. I don't know how much time's left. I've gotten 12 laps in, 133.760. We'll look at timings before I head back out. And how much time is left in the session to kind of get a gauge for... Because I want to just use these tires up before we send them back. I want to use just these the two that I've already used in this session. And so I send them back and I have fresh tires for P2, not slightly worn tires. I like to have stickers, at least 2 sets of stickers for each practice session. Look at that. As you can tell, that uphill corner, that's turn 1, 2, 3. Somewhere I'm missing a corner. I'm trying to count how many corners are in a lap. 1, 2, 3, 4,
Our best lap so far is a
5,
1:33.7.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I guess 13 is the uphill. No, 12's the uphill. 13's that one, where the big green line is. And then 14 and 15 are down here. So let's count backwards. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11. Yeah. So that sharp 90 and then that big sweep is all turn 11, and then the big sweep is turn 12. That is one of my favorite sections in a Formula One schedule, just because you're on the edge basically the whole time. Halfway through this practice session, we've already got 3 out of 6 practice programs done, and passed them with flying colors. Actually, race strategy we didn't really pass with flying colors, but we passed it with colors. Tire management, flying colors. Track acclimatization, I will call it flying colors. Just one where my positioning was off through turn 3 on average. Ooh. Still, mostly purples. All around. 3 greens, mostly purples, 1 red. I'm counting it as perfect. Excuse me. Let's look at timings. Eight tenths off of Hamilton. He's currently on soft, or he set it on soft. He might have set it on soft, but still, he ran a 29.5, I ran a 29.7, so I'm 2 tenths off in Sector 1. A 40.4 and a 40.8. 4 tenths off in Sector 2. 22.9, 23.2, so 3 tenths off in Sector 3. Timing Sector 3. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm only 3 tenths off of the guy ahead of me, and he's in a Mercedes. Valtteri Bottas. I'm completely butchering that last name, but it's the way I say it. I can't say it right. Bottas. Bottas is the way it's said. Bottas. Danny Rick, right behind me by exactly a tenth. So I'm in a nice little cubby hole. And then Fernando's just behind me. First guy over a second. That's nice. He's on an in lap, so I might want to... They want me to be fast through the speed trap. I'm going to look at what area... So that's a 6 is the neutral setup. What is this setup?
We're 20th in the speed trap.
4.
190.1 miles per hour.
So I'm the slowest through the speed trap. Let's run this setup for our next practice program. I know I don't like changing 2 variables at once, but let's run that one and see what happens for fuel management. Things still got 20 laps on them. We'll just use the piss out of them.
Okay, we'll alter the setup of the car. When you're ready, let's go.
Running less wing, probably less brake duct, or more closure on the brake ducts. I'm not sure what exactly changes on those presets. I like to move through the presets and then fine tune. And very seldom do I actually change stuff. Let's sign through on his flying lap. If it's a flying lap or an in lap. Either way, it's practice. I'll let him through. No point in pushing it. But no, I was going to start to explain kind of how the teams are structured in Formula One, because I was talking about McLaren being ranked like 7th or 8th out of all the teams. The way the teams go, you have the top 3, which really this season is more like the top 1 than the second 2. The top 3 are Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull. They have the best 6 drivers, well, the best 6 cars, arguably the best 6 drivers. They're usually the top 6 every weekend. It's just a fight for the best of the rest. And the best of the rest is usually led by Haas, which is based out of America, Renault, sometimes Force India, which is now Racing Point, still called Force India in this game. The pink cars. The black and yellow, like signs that just passed it, is right in front of us. The black and white and red Haas cars, and then the pink Racing Point Force India cars are usually leading the best of the rest. But then McLaren, Toro Rosso, which is just the second Red Bull team, which is Red Bull in Italian. And I'm drawing a blank. Sauber, which is now Alfa Romeo. They're usually leading the best of the rest category. And then Williams is, at this point, the bottom of the barrel. They were in the top 3 teams in the 90s and early 2000s, but about the mid-2000s they turned for the worst, and their new car for 2019 is absolutely the worst. Which is a shame for the drivers that are stuck in Williams. Because, I mean, there's some drivers that have raced for Williams in the past few years that I'm sure would have been able to prove themselves if they had the equipment to do it. But they just ain't got it. And I'm thinking this compound is, this worn soft that I'm on might be affecting my fuel. Because I can't keep up with the pace that they have set. Do I go live every day? Well, right now I have been going live every day. At least trying to. I'm hoping to get this Grand Prix, all the practice qualifying and the race itself knocked out before I go home from college this weekend for camping Memorial Day weekend. So I'll probably be coming back maybe Monday night. So I'll stream tonight, tomorrow, and Thursday, or Wednesday, and then I'll be going home Thursday. I'll be home Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Come back Monday. I might be able to stream for a little bit Monday night, but it'll definitely be late. And then Tuesday, pick back up with every day probably. I just started doing this again. I was doing it about 6 months ago, and then with college, I just got so busy with a couple of the classes I had and just didn't have the time to do the streaming I wanted. So I've been getting back into it this past week. Yeah, I was doing Project Cars, but that fell through. And then I just got in a big Formula One kick all of a sudden and was like, you know what? I haven't streamed in a while. I got the time to do it now. I think I will.
That lap was no good. We needed to improve on that.
Well, at least I made the pace time lap. Still not good enough on the fuel savings itself. You love F1 racing? What other types of F1? What other types of F1 racing? What other types of racing do you like? Because I like basically anything that involves racing of any sort, including horse racing. My girlfriend, who usually tunes into these races, likes NASCAR more than Formula One. I like them on the same level. But after she watched yesterday's race stream, she kind of changed her mind about Formula One. It's not what she thought it was, is what she said, basically. And then my best friend had basically the same thing to say of, wow, this is more entertaining than I thought it was. But don't worry, once you get into the middle of the race, it gets kind of dull, I will admit. especially the 2019 season. I mean, I still like playing these games, they hold my interest, but watching the 2019 season has been kind of like, you know, sitting at the dentist waiting on a root canal. Because it's just been a high-speed parade. But, that being said, it was the same thing back in the early 2000s, when Michael Schumacher was just winning everything by half a lap.
There's only 1 lap of fuel remaining.
Box this lap.
Confirmed. We'll receive you at the end of this lap.
I have both PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, and I've in fact been told that I should do a NASCAR 15 series on the PlayStation 3, but I wouldn't be able to do it live. I'd have to do pre-record and edit, which I am totally new to the world of editing. So they might be just raw footage put up. But they'd still be put up. And as you can tell by basically every aspect of this stream, it is rather amateur. And I'd been complaining to my girlfriend for a few months about how small my channel is. And she said, well, you're not going to get any bigger by not posting videos, so... I've kind of taken that and ran with it. Started posting a video every day in the form of a live stream. And I've slowly, very slowly, noticed an increase in... I should have pitted that lap.
Last lap was a 1 minute 36.1.
I'm good. Well, thank you. You probably shouldn't watch the Australia videos, though, if you think that, because you'll immediately think otherwise. This is probably my best track on the circuit, is Bahrain, and I used to love Indy, like playing on the PlayStation 2 games. I'm not going to make it back to the pits. Indy on the PlayStation, or Formula 1 Career Challenge on the PlayStation 2, I played the hell out of that game along with all the NASCAR games, and I loved Indianapolis, and then they took it away, and I feel cheated. I mean, don't get me wrong, Circuit of the Americas is a good track, but I would still prefer Indy. And I know why they left, and to be honest, it's a good reason behind why they left. Yeah, I do need to pit. I probably should have pit last lap. And I just loved Indy, and they changed the part of the track that made Indy, or Formula 1 leave Indy. So I feel like they should come back, give them a second chance. But I don't think it's going to happen. Am I going to make it? I need to have enough fuel to get a good launch out of this corner. Low fuel mode. Thank God for the reserve tank. Woo! Barely made it. But I would be doing a series in NASCAR 15, not NASCAR Heat, because I feel like NASCAR 15 was the last good NASCAR racing game. Don't get me wrong, Heat is somewhat enjoyable, but it just feels so old to me. Like, there's no options in the game. There's no tuning options. There's no camera look around options. There's like 5 buttons to run the whole game. It feels like something that came out in 2002. The graphics are great. The physics are terrible. Like, if you're not slow enough for a corner, just put the car sideways and it'll just completely turn 90 degrees on a dime. It's so unrealistic, and NASCAR 15 is the last good NASCAR game in my eyes.
Our best lap so far is a 1:33.7.
Let's see how timings have, now that a few have... So we're still in the top 6, which I will take. We're over a second off, but I'll take it. And we have run the most laps out of anybody, but trying to get that speed trap speed up, because that's one thing they want me to do to complete team objectives to get the most I can. Fast sector 2 and 3, that'll probably happen in practice 2 when I go into qualifying trim. Top speed, that might never happen or it might during qualifying trim when I smash the wings flat and hit the gas on full fuel and full ERS. Speaking of ERS, let's manage it. Even though I was terrible on fuel management. No, wrong set. Don't put me on a new set of softs. I'll have to slap you.
Everyone clear? Car to track.
Saving those for next session. Which next session I might stream late tonight, practice 2, or I might stream it in the morning. Depends on how supper, dinner plans shake out. Because it is 8 o'clock and I haven't eaten anything yet. So, just I get off class at 6 and started this stream as soon as I could. To try and get 2 hour-and-a-half practice sessions in tonight. Oh, I won't leave yet. I'll finish the practice session at least. And then I'll leave a little break between P1 and P2. Long enough for me to get something to eat so I don't keel over from starvation. And I try to stream during normal hours. I'm in Eastern time zone. I try to stream during normal hours, but sometimes I wind up streaming at 1 in the morning. But I never take the streams down. They're always on the channel. And I try to do, intros to videos instead of just the usual start the stream, wait for people to show up, and there's a whole bunch of 30 minutes of nothing at the beginning. Because honestly, I have a pretty small audience, if you couldn't tell by my subscriber count and the current watch count. But it has been going up. Even in the past week, I've noticed more people tuning in at one time. Woo! These tires are cooked. That back end stepped out big time around that last corner. Holy cow. That was what Elio Castroneves refers to as a code brown. Need to check my shorts. I've had this channel for a while. I just started posting stuff about a year ago, and then, like I said, about a 6-month break that ended like a week ago. Oh, there's tire wear big time on this. As you can see, like when I started this set of tires out, they were pretty smooth and glossy black across the surface. But if you look now, they're kind of chewed up, not as smooth. I don't know how well you can tell, but for me in 1080p it's rather obvious. But I try to stream on 720p, but it's basically whatever my internet can keep up with. I would do 720p 60 FPS, but my router would completely commit suicide if I tried doing that. Oh boy. Back end stepped out big time right there. Yeah, I might need to save this and fuel management for next session when I can, have new tires, which I could put on new tires now, but I don't want to waste tires, although it wouldn't really be a waste if I'm getting a practice program done. What will happen if I crash? Well, I have it set on simulation damage and no flashback, so if I crash and hit the wall and lose a wheel or have terminal damage of any kind, it's the end of the session for me. I like to play with a certain amount of realism. I did most of the sessions on the Australian GP and helmet cam, but I was told that from a spectator standpoint this view was better, and to be honest, I agree with it. And it gives me a better view of the track because it sits higher up. I kind of like this view. I actually wind up playing in it a lot. Woo! Woo! Controlled chaos down in that corner. These worn tires, this is the corner I really got to look out on. Especially clipping that rumble strip like I did on the way out. I'll clip that and I'll go straight into that wall. I've done it 3 or 4 times. Oh, you can absolutely change the view. I can run through... Just a second. Once I get to a straightaway, I'll run different views. Here's this chase views. I don't really like chase views in open wheel games. I don't know why, but I just don't. There's on the nose view. I did this view for quite a while, which really kind of shows how little the halo makes a difference on the driver's perspective. Which a lot of people argued that it did, but really doesn't. Then there's centered TV pod, and then there's offset TV pod, which is what they use for onboard camera on the races on TV. Oh, dang. They said I managed it too good.
We have 2 laps of fuel remaining.
Do I like food? I like food when I'm hungry. 2 laps of fuel remaining, but we know that's a lie because I can get a lap in limp mode. Or about a lap in limp mode. So, since I finished that practice program a lap early and they have extra fuel factored in for an extra flying lap, I'm going to push a full-bore flying lap on this scrub set of softs, which is probably going to be the death of me, but we're late enough in the practice session to say screw it. Rich fuel mixture, hot lap, DRS open. I'm not ignoring you on purpose. I'm focusing on racing, and I got the chat open off to the side, so I can't exactly read it. Really, apparently there's no point in doing a flying lap because it's slow no matter what. Box this lap.
Pitting this lap then. Come into the pits at the end of this lap.
Woo! Overshot that one. Yeah, I can read the chat down the straightaways, but when I'm focusing in the corners... I mean, on a cool-down lap like that, I can... An in lap like this, I could pay attention a little bit. Yes, I'm coming in that lap. Is that the crew chief talking? Well, crew chief's the NASCAR word for it. Race engineer is the Formula One word for it. So yes, that is my crew chief of sorts talking to me. And I have the audio mix set weird, so he's really loud in my ear. And that was bad, speeding in pit lane. I need to turn the audio mix down in the settings before I do another practice session, because he is like blowing my eardrums out every time he talks. Yeah, I'm used to watching NASCAR too, but I watch both of them enough that I can flip-flop between terms, like flipping a switch, which kind of like when you, I don't know how much of a gamer you are, but when you play one game for so long, you get used to that control scheme, and then you change to another game, and you just, a similar game, like a go from Battlefield as a first-person shooter to Call of Duty,
1 minute 33.7.
and you'll spend forever trying to figure it out. But when you flip-flop between them more often, it gets to the point where your brain's trained to switch more quickly and get used to each other more quickly. Say hi to hi there. Well, hi there, hi there, hi there, hi there. Who's on first? So we're now over a second off pace. I did say hello, bro. Bro. It's just a prank, bro. I don't know how fast we are for the speed trap. I wish I could check that easily. Cody. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. So I got 2 people in chat now saying it's me, and I have not the foggiest clue as to who either of them are. But anyways, we're faster than our teammate. That's good. We're just over a second.
Okay, here's something to remember about this circuit. Turns 9 and 10 are very tricky. Ignore 9 almost entirely, stay in the middle and take it straight so that you're set up for 10. If it gives you problems, remember that it's all about exit speed out of 10. Don't try and carry too much momentum into the apex, as you'll just understeer off into the sand.
Oh, no, it's Chris and Michael, isn't it? Yeah, you were doing good till you said Brud. So either Lauren has a second account or it's 2 members of the family jumping at me right now, which is nice. Anyways, what's for dinner? Why do you have a second channel called Hi There? Or are you just playing me like a fool and it's somebody else? I don't know. I'm basically just going to ignore it for now. I wish I could see what speed through the speed trap I am, so I know whether I'm in the top 10. Because they want my, hey, I beat the average speed trap speed. Woohoo! I can now set up the car to actually be drivable. Which will be... Okay, I want a little bit more speed, and this is just barely too little on rear wing, so I'm going to step the rear wing up a little bit to get more rear downforce. Because I need a little bit more rear aero. $11 laps. No, he's in trouble. Oh, so Michael's in trouble? Oh boy. Can only imagine. I could really throw all of y'all for a loop and change PSI to, or change my settings from SAE to metric, and then have, you know, bar for pressure and kilometers per hour for speed, and then it'll be like watching real F1. I'm in trouble. Why am I in trouble? Sorry for yelling too loud. Let's see. So we're out of
I'll get these changes made.
practice programs to run, except qualifying pace, but I don't want to go into quality trims without being in at least practice session 2. I'm in trouble because I don't listen to you. Yeah, I'm just going to ignore that. Fuel management, I'll run again. Somehow is good enough for ERS. But yeah, I'll run fuel management again in P2 when I have a fresh set of tires. And I'll run qualifying pace in I'll run it in P2 or I'll run it in P3 because I don't really like to go into quali trims until P3 because I don't like to eat up the engine more than I have to. So now that we got all the practice programs out of the way, we're just going to turn some laps. Now, what set of tires should I wear out first? I'll let you guys decide in the chat. Should I wear out the softs the rest of the way?
Our fastest lap is a 1:33.7.
I got 10 laps to run out the end of the softs. So run the softs out, and if I have any extra time, which I might not since there's only 15 minutes left, then I'll run the mediums out, but I doubt I'll have the time left to run out the mediums. So, without further ado, let's hit the track.
Checks complete. We're ready.
Oh, here's what grinds my gears. That McLaren reminded me, which I've been staring at McLaren for 60 minutes by now, but I just now remembered. Fernando Alonso, my now teammate, but this year he moved on to the Indy 500 to try and win the Motorsports Triple Crown, missed the Indy 500 field by 2/100ths of a second yesterday, and I was really cheering for him, but my favorite Indy driver, James Hinchcliffe, just made it into the field, and Helio Castroneves made it. So it's a bittersweet deal. Session update.
Quick position rundown for you. The current top 5 are Vettel, Raikkonen, Verstappen, Hamilton and Bottas. Okay, so as for the cars around us, just ahead are Hamilton, Bottas and Ricciardo. And behind us are Alonso, Magnussen and Sainz. The fastest lap of the race so far is a 1:32.4.
Weather report.
Radar is clear. Weather is looking good for now. Dries seem like the best tyre for now.
Do I have it on manual shifting? No, I have it on automatic. That's another assist that I might turn off later in the season once I get more into the flow. But really, manual on a road course in Formula 1, I mean, you got 7 gears to be blasting through, and if you pay attention to the gear counter in the bottom right, the automatic is just blasting through like crazy. Especially on downshifts into corners. Went 7th to 4th that quick. Oh, there's 8 gears. Never mind me. I'm still used to the old cars. Oh yeah, judging by my delta down the front straightaway and then into the braking zone, once I slap some super softs on this thing, it's going to be bad fast. We might be giving the top 3 teams a run for their money, even though we're sitting at best of the rest right now, me and Alonso. Woo-hoo-hoo! Back in, stepping out. Yeehaw! Tokyo drifting. So at this point, I'm just logging laps. Gonna see if I can't run these tires out of tire by the end of the practice session. So this is kind of a laid back time. I'm gonna be running kind of conservative. Not really pushing the limits, although I'm saying that while running up on curbs and stuff. So, this will be more of a question time. Is there anything about Formula 1 that I've mentioned so far, or that you've picked up on so far, or that you see on screen at the moment, that confuses you? If so, bring it up in chat and I'll try to notice it and rectify your confusion. Stuff like DRS, delta, brake bias, differential, fuel mixes, ERS. I tried to explain that stuff before, though I explained the power unit rather thoroughly earlier in the session, which for about 15 minutes, I think. Or what any of the dots on the map are or anything like that. Delta. Delta is the measurement of time. You'll notice it going red and green and stuff like that. And that is basically, it's measuring, it's a live readout of what I am compared to what I'm running now compared to my fastest lap. It's called Delta because it reads from 3 different positions, as in like a triangle. It reads how far you are from the last timing line and how close you are to the next timing line, based on where you are now, based on where you were at that point, what time you were at, what time you had run at that point on the fastest lap. And a Ferrari track, a Formula One track, is broken up into 3 timing sectors, which you'll see on timing boards and stuff, and I explained earlier how I was slower in Sector 3, or within 0.2 in Sector 2, and they're distinguished by the lines on the map. Like, there was the finish line, there will be another just white line across the track, and then another white line across the track, and those are timing sectors. There's 3 of them. There's 20 marshalling sectors at each track, and that's basically where a flagman stands, or a marshal as they call them, and that'll break up into 20 sections that can be under yellow flag or blue flag conditions. Blue flag means that a faster car is coming and you need to get out of the way of them. Yellow flag means no overtaking, slow down, use caution because there's a wreck in the area. On the top left corner, what does P7 mean? P7 is my position. Like, and they use it more in Formula One. Sometimes you'll hear them use it in NASCAR. Or really, basically every racing series other than NASCAR, you hear them say P1, P2, P3, and so on. But I'll explain safety cars and virtual safety cars if they come up in a race in the future, because that's more of a convoluted thing, and that'll be easier to explain as it happens. Because if I explain it now, it'll be like me trying to explain the Higgs boson without you having any of the foggiest knowledge of physics. The different colors, I'm sure you'll ask this eventually if you haven't figured it out yet, but the different colors by the teams, or by the driver names, are the different teams. Like, I'm on McLaren. McLaren is orange. Dark, like the dark blue, if you see in the top left corner next to Ricardo's name, is Red Bull. The light blue that's chasing me around on the mini-map is, like the pale blue. Right behind me on the mini-map is Mercedes. Right behind him is a Toro Rosso. And then there's like a very, very bright cyan that is Williams. There's white, which is Haas, the American team. Yellow is Renault. The yellow and black cars. Pink is Force India, now known as Racing Point. And red is, bright red is Ferrari, and dark red is Sauber. Alfa Romeo Sauber. The lines on the track on the mini-map, like the green one that I just drove over, is a DRS detection zone. You'll understand what that is when I explain DRS here in a minute. The green lines on the track, like that gradient green that I just went over, where it's like bright green to dark green, and then here's dark green to light green, those are the DRS zones. I'll explain those in a second here as I let Bottas through. The yellow one at the end of the front straightaway, it'll be in a different spot in all the different tracks. Whoa, the back end stepped out big time. These tires are whipped. But anyways, the yellow dot is the speed trap. It'll be placed at the end of the longest straightaway at each track, just before the braking zone. So it's to measure basically the highest mile an hour of each car throughout the weekend.
Okay, that last lap was a 1 minute.
And it basically is just there for show. It's something to tell the fans, to basically to kind of compare who has the top speed. And usually the American team is the fastest through it. Yeah, I figured it'd be kind of hard to see the colors, but between the being on a small screen and the probably coming through at a lower resolution on the stream. But if you notice them in the future, I'm sure there's points in time where the colors are a bit more obvious. And they pretty well correspond to the paint schemes. But anyways, I'll explain DRS for you. DRS is short for Drag Reduction System. It is a system used on the cars in the back wing. If you look, here, there's the back wing with it open. There's the back wing with it closed. It opens up the back wing to reduce the drag on the car to let it go faster. In practice and qualifying, anybody can use it at any time in the DRS zones. There's usually 2 or 3 on each track. This track has 2, if I remember right. At least I've only been opening it during 2. And the green zones, the green dots on the map, the like bullseyes, is the DRS detection zones. During the race, if you are within, after the second lap, so on the third lap of the race and the third lap after each restart, the FIA will allow drivers to use the DRS. You can use the DRS if you are within a second of the car ahead of you. There's a whole reasoning behind why it's used. It's used to level the playing field because with today's F1 cars, if you're behind somebody, you can't really keep up with them due to the dirty air behind them. So it's to level the playing field coming down the straightaway. So basically, if you're within a second of the guy in front of you, like right now, I'm basically within a second, well, I was, of Brendan Hartley. If I was within a second of him and it was the race going over that green bullseye, I could use the DRS during the next DRS zone to kind of help reel them in. It was started as a temporary fix for a temporary problem that has become more of a permanent fix for a permanent problem. And it's been around for about almost 10 years at this point in F1. But it really makes things interesting. Then the ERS, obviously, the higher number, the higher the amount of electronic motor boost the car gets, and it only applies electric boost when at 100% throttle. So if you're sandbagging and let off the throttle, it'll stop. And the DRS automatically closes when the brakes are applied, which sometimes malfunctions like it did for, I can't remember who the driver was, I think it was Charles Leclerc. Last year at Monza, his DRS stuck open, so he didn't have any rear downforce going into one of the, well, Monza is basically long straightaway, slow corner, long straightaway, slow corner, so he was going into a corner and didn't have any rear downforce, so the back end of the car just snapped around on him, he hit the grass, his rims dug in, and he went flipping down into the gravel trap. It was a rather spectacular crash, and it was all caused because his DRS stuck open. As you may or may not be able to tell, I am really wrestling this car around the track here lately. My lap times have fallen off, and the back end is sticking out in every corner. But we're down to about 2 minutes to go in practice. Now this game is not quite full simulation like I'd want it to be, but it is a hell of a lot more simulation than the NASCAR games of today, which I love. And I feel like Codemasters, the people who make this game, should make the NASCAR games because they are damn good at making racing games. They have so many, they add stuff as they go instead of just trying to rework the whole game every year. Like, the 2018 game is the first year they had historic cars that you could drive, which is something I really wish they'd do in NASCAR games. And this year they're adding Formula 2, so basically, basically the Xfinity series of the Formula 1 world, they're adding it to this year's game. And they obviously update the tracks every year and stuff like that. And you can run it in. You can change the difficulties and assist to run basically full simulation, or you can run full arcade, basically like the Duesenberry Martin and Utechnics NASCAR games like 2011 through 2015. You gotta go? Well, I'm about done anyway, and I'm gonna take a break for supper, dinner, whatever you want to call it, between practice 1 and practice 2. I know you probably won't be able to watch practice 2 because it'll be late at night. But, like I said, I don't take streams off the channel, so you can watch it if you feel like it tomorrow morning when you wake up. So I will see you later, young man. Yeah, I'll either stream tonight or I might stream it in the morning depending on what time I wake up and whether I did it last night. I'm only going to get about one more lap in anyways. Whew, these tires are whipped! Why did my brake bias get shifted? I don't know if that was an automatic thing, but it was at 60% at the beginning if I remember right. And of course you can only change it in 2-bar increments, 2% increments. Yeehaw! Back in stepping out. So we're not going to catch anybody this lap, or this session. Well, this lap is complete now. But I'll just run one. Let's call it good. Sebastian Vettel sets the fastest time of the session. Session update.
Repeat that. There's interference.
I'm sure there's interference. Session update.
Here's the top 5 cars as things stand. Vettel, Raikkonen, Verstappen, Hamilton, and Bottas. So just ahead of us in this session at the moment are Hamilton, Bottas, and Ricciardo. And we're in front of Alonso, Magnussen, and Sainz. Currently, the fastest lap is a 1 minute 32.4.
Fastest lap overall.
Box this lap, please. Box this lap. The fastest lap at this point in time is a 1:32.4.
Best lap update.
So far, our fastest lap is a 1 minute 33.7.
Alright, that was a little rundown of what happened this session. We're going to look at the time scales, though. Afterwards, I was just kind of curious how much of a gap there was to Vettel if he'd set a faster lap. We're going to bring it into the garage. These 2 sets of tires that we used today are going to be sent back to Pirelli, and practice 2 later tonight or early in the morning, depending on when I get it done, will be the next 2 sets of tires, and we'll have super softs, so we'll be able to chase after that top 6 that we're sitting right behind, and hopefully set a quali trim lap. Late in the session, depends on how I feel. I kind of want to run another hour and a half of race trim just to get laps under the belt, because believe it or not, running laps after lap after lap gets it ingrained in your brain.
Here are your top 3. Vettel, Raikkonen, and Max Verstappen.
So we're
practice times are on the
a second and 2 tenths, almost 3 tenths out.
With more F1 action soon.
Ferrari leading the charge. First driver, second driver, then Verstappen for Red Bull, then the 2 Mercedes, and another Red Bull, and we as an individual and we as a team are leading the best of the rest. And then it's Haas, Renault, Haas, Force India, Sauber, and on down to the last 6. And of course, Williams at the bottom. Who'd have thought? Let's see if anything happened in the session that I didn't notice. Let's check with the race director. Nothing! Speeding in the pit lane. Wonder who had done that. Tire stints. So a few guys did make laps on super softs. Both Mercedes made laps on super softs and couldn't run down the Ferraris. Ricciardo, interestingly enough, along with the Mercedes, did not run any mediums, although his teammate Verstappen did, but couldn't run down the Mercedes or the Ferraris on super softs. And then I ran medium soft. Alonso ran medium soft. I'm the only, or no, there are some that ran only 2 sets, like Kimi, myself, Hulkenberg, Grosjean, Perez, Hartley, Gasly, Sirotkin, and Stroll only doing one set of tires. But both the two most worn sets get returned to Pirelli at the end of the practice, and I'm sure you're sick of hearing by now. Here's the championship points. I never really showed those after the race yesterday. I was just, kind of mad and wanted to get out of there as quick as I could. So Alonso sitting in 11th, just outside the points, which makes no sense. Everybody with points, without any points, is tied for 11th. Right behind all the Force India of Sergio Perez. So Alonso, Grosjean, Leclerc, Hartley, Ocon, Gasly, Ericsson, Stroll, Sirotkin, and me are all tied for 11th. Fighting to see who the first is to get points, and judging by how I did in this practice session, which I know is P1, so not everybody's got their stuff dialed in, including me, but it's looking like I might make the points this weekend, hopefully. I do. Constructors standings, of course, we have no points. We're sitting at the back, just behind Williams with no points, which the reason they're ranked above us is I don't know. Force India only has 1 point. Haas, Renault, Red Bull, Scuderia, Ferrari, and Mercedes leading the charge. Oh, they're tied with Ferrari. Ooh. Interesting. Well, anyways, that's not gonna do it for me. No, I'm a dummy. Let's see what kind of interviews we got to do. If any, if they want to talk to me after last weekend. Didn't talk to me after the race in Australia. I'm surprised by that. No interviews. Laps completed, 50 resource points, 10 for the disciplinary record. 4 passed, 3 perfected. Awesome! 648 resource points. McLaren has gotten a little bit more faith in me. Renault has some interest. So does Williams. So does Ferrari. And Force India and Toro Rosso. Haas, Mercedes, surprisingly, Alfa Romeo, Sauber, and Aston Martin, Red Bull have gained a lot of interest in me. More so than McLaren has. My respect level has gone up a little bit, I think. Let's see if we have enough to invest in any R&D. I kind of want to up my quality control. I feel like it'd be smart to do that on aerodynamics if I have the resource points to do it. 700, dang it! Do I have enough to invest in these? 520. Working on that. Department capacity reach. Okay. 510 for a new crankshaft. Shoot, go for it. Build me a new crankshaft. Build me a new crankshaft. When will it be done by? Let's take a look. Be done by Azerbaijan. Baku. Aerodynamics should be done by next week. The new rear wing outer strakes. And the new crankshaft will be ready for test in Baku. So far, everybody's on a level playing field. Nobody's made any improvements for this week. This graph shows the performance levels, and you could clearly see the best of the rest gap I was talking about. There's Ferrari and Mercedes. You can't even see each other because they're stacked one on top of each other. Then Red Bull's a little bit down, and then everybody else stacks up down here. There's Renault, Haas, Force India, McLaren, Toro Rosso, and Sauber sitting right on top of each other, and a little bit more of a gap down to Williams. So technically, we're ranked 7th in power right now. Judging by how me and Alonso did this practice session, I'd put us more at about 5th, but I suppose it's fair. Sorry for hitting the mic. But that's going to do it for this stream. I will see you all later tonight, after dinner, tomorrow morning sometime. I don't know. Either way, I'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in.